Ahoy! We have the early part of the roadmap for 2024 now, but there are a lot of upcoming things that the devs have confirmed that they want to bring to the game, which didn't necessarily have a schedule attached to them. Some of them did, but some of them didn't. And I wanted to kind of update the overview here of things that are coming into New World in the future, though obviously without a date, so some could be earlier or later. Just to give you guys an idea of what to expect and also to hold the devs accountable to some degree here, that they actually deliver on what they said they're going to give us. So as the very first thing here, we have a quick overview of the things that are confirmed for early 2024. We talked about that the other day, so we have for PvP and PvE 8 new artifacts that are coming. Then for PvE specifically, we have the season trial, but the mutators are no longer mentioned here, and Scott already said that they might not be the case, so I think that part may just be going away entirely and it's just going to be a normal season trial. We have Crossworld Expeditions, the main story quest update, the last one, so it's finally complete after that, and the Group Finder. Along with that, we're also getting proper gamepad support, which is likely leading up to a console version. Next, we have a section of things that are maybe coming in 2024 because they were mainly 2023 content that was planned but then delayed, but they aren't really mentioned in the same way anymore, so it's not guaranteed that this is coming. The first thing here is the season trinket, which is somehow powered up through things that you do during the season. They delayed this because of the introduction of artifacts, which was originally not part of their plan, so they kind of figured that they already have a pretty new mechanic that is pretty game-changing when it comes to atomization, and they didn't want to add the season trinket on top of that, which doesn't necessarily mean that it's never coming, but at least not for now. In the PvP section, we first have one that I only realized when looking up things for this video, because cross-world arenas are no longer mentioned in the same breath with cross-world expeditions. This was always kind of mentioned together, and now all of a sudden it's just expeditions and the group finder, whereas cross-world arenas seem to be even later, which is very surprising because you would think they'd use a very similar system to OPR for that. But to be honest, as an arena player, getting the short end of the stick is just standard procedure at this point. Seasonal territory control is something they were thinking of introducing but have now delayed because of influence races, because they rather work on improving those first, do things with the feedback from that. And in that context, they were also talking about wanting an open world PvP Great Cleave moment, where you just have a lot of people converging into one point and having PvP, which I guess they have kind of achieved with the influence races, at least for a while. So I think that may be what they may have been referring to back then, so I wouldn't necessarily expect more than that for now. That said, I don't know of many people that still participate in influence races unless they are part of a company that is planning to push a territory. This may differ from server to server and from company to company, but overall I feel like that open world PvP moment is dying down significantly, though there may be some personal bias on my end here. With that, we're moving to the long-term stuff from last year that didn't have any date attached to it. They just said this is something that we want to do in the future. When it comes to PvP and PvE, the first thing we have are nameplates and party visibility. They want to improve that, which I think is desperately needed still. Especially in large-scale combat, seeing teammates really shouldn't be as hard as it currently is. The next thing I've grayed out here because it technically happened, but I'm not sure if it's done, and that's the musket rework. Obviously, switching from hitscan to a projectile with drop-off was a very significant change, but I feel like the musket doesn't really feel reworked as a whole still. I think especially the right tree still feels very much unfinished for what the new idea for the musket is, so I feel like we could see more significant changes down the road for the musket, possibly, depending on how happy they are with the current standing of it. At this point, a quick plug. If you're enjoying videos like this, then consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you'd like to support me further and get early trading tips, then feel free to do so on Patreon. Now there's one more thing that I have listed under PvP and PvE, but it could also be under general because it depends on how they implement it, and that is company housing. Company housing could range from just being purely cosmetic, just another additional house, to having a major impact on the game through various buffs, through fighting over company houses and whatnot. There are many options on how this could be implemented and utilized, so it's hard to say what exactly the impact of it would be. Given the current speed and trajectory though, I would not expect this for a very long time. When it comes to PvP, one of the main things they want to do is instanced practice or casual wars of some kind. And I would not be entirely surprised if that is the major PvP content for the next expansion. That said, when talking about it recently, it did not sound like this is something they're very actively working on at the moment, at least. So it could also be that this is still much further away than my prediction would be. Considering my first prediction for this was off as well, I thought this might be part of the previous expansion, but it wasn't. Something else that is in extremely high demand in the PvP player base is of course the new OPR map that they have already confirmed as something that will be coming at some point, but who knows when that point is. They've also said they want to make adjustments to OPR for ranged balance, which I'm not entirely sure how much further than what they're currently doing they want to go with that. I'm not sure if they're referring to things like score for being close to the point, or if they're referring to actual adjustments that are like physical obstacles across the map that make it harder to fight from a further range. So depending on how we can interpret that, maybe this has already happened or is yet to happen. On the PvE side of things, probably one of the most interesting changes is the corrupted portal rework. They want to lower the frequency and the amount of corrupted portals and give them higher rewards in return. At the moment, corrupted portals are just kind of an annoyance over the world, I guess, that people need to farm sometimes, more or less. But if they made them more interesting and more engaging, so they were like big challenges where a big group of people would go there, at the same time not making them like world bosses where it gets very boring, that could be a very interesting piece of content if it, for example, scaled with the number of players present. But that in itself would be a big project, and there are obviously also much lazier approaches they could take with that would, on the other hand, result in it being released earlier. So it depends on how much time they want to put into this. They wanted to do a boss type rework for old expeditions, but this was before they announced that Ward and Bane would be removed. So it could be that now they will no longer do that because they say you can just use coatings for that instead and your potions and you'll be fine. I'm not sure. I still think some of the bosses being separate types is a bit of an unnecessary annoyance, so I could see them still changing this, but I would imagine it's not their highest priority. They also want to release a full raid with trash and multiple bosses. I originally thought this may be related to the season trial with mutators. However, that does not seem to be the case because they said that the season trial will be roughly 15 minutes long, which doesn't really sound like a full raid to me. Last but not least, we have a bunch of general features and changes. They want to introduce a barber where you can change the look of your character. Knowing how they handle transmog, I'm assuming this is going to be some larger scale project for them as well. They want to give you the option to name change and to copy your existing character from the live client to PTR. So you can test stuff directly relevant to you instead of the standardized loadouts. They want to give us the option to use chat emojis at some point in the future maybe, but it's not really a big deal. And they would like to have a furniture rarity indicator that better tells you which furniture is actually good. Some sort of aptitude system for people who have maxed out the season pass to get some extra rewards afterwards is something they are also considering. They want to introduce further Azoth engine upgrades, but I guess that's just a continuous thing they're doing anyways. For companies, they want to introduce some specific improvements. They want to give them a transaction lock, a potential member count increase in the future, and also a progression system in the company, so you can level up in the company or rank up in the company somehow. So overall, definitely a lot of changes that are still on the list. Question is how many of them will stay true or get scrapped eventually. If there are any updates, I will of course let you know here, so consider subscribing and clicking the bell. And if you'd like to support me further, you can do so on Patreon. Thanks to all of my patrons who already do exactly that. And thank you for watching. Sloth out.